Senator Ron Johnson, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He also sits on the Foreign Relations, Budget, and Commerce Committees. Sir, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for weighing in. I want to ask you about the caravan. The president is asking the Congress to close the loopholes that cause these people to come into the country illegally. Once they get in and claim credible fear, 80% of them, that's 8 out of 10, will lose their case because they are presenting fraudulent claims, according to Tom Homan formerly of ICE. Your take on what the U.S. should do with these caravans headed to the border?
I completely agree with the president. We need to change the laws. We have to close these loopholes. We need better barriers. There's no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is we reward people for coming to this country illegally, because if they get in here, they're able to stay. And listen, as troublesome as these caravans are, the fact of the matter is, Maria, on an average day last year, 1,400 individuals came to this country illegally between the borders. Another 500 presented themselves at the port of entries. And again, we're having to deal with these folks. And the broken legal immigration system we have right now is prompting this. So we have lengthened adjudication process. We have an almost unending appeals process. And, of course, one of the ways we're handling this backlog of cases is we just simply grant administrative closures to the tune of close to 900 per day last year, although Attorney General Sessions stopped that administrative closures. But no, this is a terrible situation. The main problem is literally our laws, bad court decisions, bad court precedents that incentivize people to come to this country illegally. We need to end that. I'm working on a bill called the Families Act through my committee that would hopefully address the inability to enforce our laws without separating families. Hopefully we can get agreement from Democrats. Nobody wants to separate families. Hopefully Democrats want to secure the borders, but I have my doubts because their solution literally is sanctuary cities, open borders, catch and release, and abolishing ICE.
But I understand that, but why haven't these laws been changed? I mean, the Republicans have been in the majority for the last 2 years. Why haven't we seen any movement on our immigration laws?
Because Democrats want comprehensive reform that literally creates more of these incentives. They're really not interested in closing these incentives. They just want to take a look and listen. I would love to solve the problem of the dreamers, but they won't work with us to actually enforce the laws and these incentives, stop the endless appeals. So again, we have not been able to come together. My own personal preference was let's just take a look at one of these problems, the family separation issue, and let's fix that one. I'm trying to do that with my committee. Rather than comprehensive immigration reform, which quite honestly, the last time the Senate passed that, it included $260 billion of welfare benefits for non-U.S. citizens. I call that an enormous incentive for further illegal immigration, which is why I voted against it. So let's start this process step by step, try and find the areas of agreement. It's one thing that as a business person I'm always trying to do. Try and find the areas of agreement. Don't worry about the areas of disagreement. Find the areas of agreement, and then try and fix these problems step by step. One word I'd like to, quite honestly, outlaw in Washington, D.C. is comprehensive. We do a terrible job of it.
Yeah.
Maria, one of the things I've done, we've held almost 30 hearings on some aspect of border security.
Okay.
Frequently, when I start out those hearings, I list the laws that we passed to fix this problem. And then as I list the law, dating back to the mid-'80s, I talk about the number of people in this country illegally, and it goes from 3.5 million to 6 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12. We pass all these laws. It says we're going to fix them, but we never do because there's not a very good problem-solving process inside Congress. We need to start solving these problems. But you have to look at the reality situation. We just ignore the reality.
What's the answer to the families separating in terms of changing that law? And which law do you think is the most onerous that needs to go? What's the worst one that you can just communicate to viewers?
Well, right now it is the reinterpretation of the Flores settlement that forces ICE to no longer detain children past 20 days, even if they're in a family unit. And so that is why when we tried to enforce the laws and we separated the children, obviously that was a huge outcry. But that's the first thing. We need to come to agreement on how to actually fix the Flores settlement so that we can detain families and their children together and then adjudicate their claim rapidly so that we can send them home. Michael Chertoff faced a surge of illegal immigrants from Brazil. He established a rapid removal process,
right.
Sent them back to Brazil. The next year, we went from 33,000 people coming in from Brazil to the following year, 1,700. We need consequences. We can't reward people for coming in this country illegally. And right now, because of it, we incentivize families to come in, we incentivize unaccompanied children, and so we've had a huge surge of both those types of illegal immigrants.
Right, because people do what you inspect, not what you expect. Let's take a short break. I've got more to ask you about, Senator. Continue with my exclusive interview with Ron Johnson after this, including the U.S. responses to the theft of U.S. technology by China, the latest economic numbers as well. Stay with us, Senator Ron Johnson. for us. Of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He also sits on the Foreign Relations, Budget, and Commerce Committees. Sir, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for weighing in for us.
Good morning, Maria.
From a Homeland Security standpoint, what are your takeaways from what took place in Pittsburgh yesterday?
Well, you know, Department of Homeland Security had apparently already consulted with the synagogue, and they actually had plans in place for exit in case a tragedy like this were to occur. It's sick that people have to plan for these things, but there is a fair amount of consulting that occurs there. But like Congressman Radcliffe mentioned earlier, this really does point out how effective and how brave our law enforcement is in terms of the bomb suspect, how quickly that person was apprehended. And in this case, again, law enforcement rushing into a synagogue, putting themselves in danger. I think 4 law enforcement officers were injured in that. We need to celebrate these individuals. We need to certainly thank them for their service and sacrifice, not denigrate them.
Yeah, very, very important.